share that at a later time. So real quickly, I'll go through the overview of CDG. Go ahead, Jay, to the next slide. So the presenters I'll be hosting: Shane Jones on business development with CDG. The Jay Ellington is president of CDG. He will be the subject matter expert. The topic is mitigating capital project risk using PDRI process. I won't steal Jay's thunder on what the PDRI process is, but essentially it's upfront planning and measurement system designed for capital projects as you go through the stages. A little bit about CDG for those that are not aware of CDG. We are an engineering firm based out of St. Louis with another office in Sheridan, Wyoming. We were started in 1992. Today we're around 80 employees, multiple disciplines: mechanical, structural, civil, electrical, some chemies, architects. Do a lot of heavy industrial type work, but really broad spread of work of what we do. We work for the federal government and the Corps, Army Corps of Engineers, manufacturing companies, grain handling companies, utility work, power plants, transmission distribution, substations, chemical plants, so a wide range of projects that we do. We are fairly proud of two factors of CDG. One is the length of employees. Our average tenure of people working for CDG is around 12 years, and that's not their total experience. Obviously, a lot of folks gathered experience before joining CDG, but we, as a firm, have been able to hold on to employees and gain it as they gain experience working for CDG with a lot of clients. The other thing is we've been fortunate and greatly appreciated our clients over the years with a lot of repeat business. Within the engineering firm, as we get to know our clients, we feel we do a better job in serving them, and vice versa. So, little commercial there on CDG before we get into the presentation. Go ahead, Jay.
All right. Thanks, Shane. Good afternoon, everyone. As Shane said, I'm president of CDG Engineers. A little bit about my background. I'm an electrical engineer, but I've been a senior project manager for many years and multidiscipline projects. And we came across this particular product a few years ago. It was introduced to us by the head of engineering for Anheuser-Busch. And it's called the Project Definition Rating Index. And you're going to see some things here, and you're probably going to scratch your head, want to ask some questions later. Please get that into the chat and make sure you get those questions in. We're going to give you a really like a 50,000 foot view of what this is, and give you an idea of how it can benefit you. The biggest thing you're going to be able to do is mitigate the risk that you have, and it's and these large capital projects. I'm sure that you sweat bullets over those things, and you wonder, do you have enough money? Do you have enough resources? Do you have enough time? What are your constraints? And the whole idea is that this method helps define all those things before you ever put a figurative pencil to paper as far as the design goes. So this was a tool that's been developed by the Construction Industry Institute. The Construction Industry Institute resides as a subset of very smart people at the University of Texas in Austin. And I've got a link on the screen there. You can go look for yourself. It's www.construction-institute.org. That is the group, the consortium that has developed this system. We're going to be successful, and we're going to kind of walk you through that. Our claim to fame, though, is that we've been successful with actually bringing people through the facilitation. We do the facilitation process and to educate people on how it applies to them. So I'll start off with a kind of I think a well-known project, which was at the turn of the 19th century. We saw Lewis and Clark. Of course, it's near and dear to us because here in the St. Louis area, it started off with a group of individuals from just and ended up in the northwest part of the country, and they set off on an expedition to a relatively unknown territory. They had untamed wilderness, aggressive native people along the way. They had to carry enough supplies to provide for the expedition of over 2 years of spring, summer, fall, and winter. And they had to ensure they had the right people on the boat. And at that time, they didn't have Google Maps or GPS. So it's kind of an interesting thing to say, head west, young man. And lo and behold, they had to prepare for that. So what was interesting about that, and we're going to get into some of the aspects of the project, the things that occurred along the way. So this is a map from 1804. You can see up in the right hand corner of your screen. That's a legitimate map from 1804. That's when the expedition got started. So you can see a lot of blank spots over there on the west side of the country. A little more definition on the east side and in the middle. But boy, they were basically heading into territories it's pretty much unknown. And so how would you like to be the project manager for this particular adventure? It was an interesting thing that they decided to do, and Jefferson decided he wanted to know more about the West and ensure that they had good intelligence before they hit the button to go west. Excuse me, just a minute here. I just lost something, if you don't mind. There we go. And so we all know the successful outcome of the expedition, but do we know what went into the front end planning work? Now, on the front end planning side of things, do we really ever spend enough time doing that? Maybe some of you do, but it's been our experience that most of the people in the projects we've been involved with don't really budget enough time to plan out the upcoming project appropriately. And a lot of times that's because executive pressure say, hey, we got to get this done. We got to get this manufacturing plant in operation to turn dollars. And before you know it, you've got a ready, fire, aim project. And those are usually bound for disaster and blown budgets, blown schedules, and a lot of people running around trying to figure out what to do next. So you've probably been tumbling around some of the benefits of front-end planning in your brains for years, but on the slide here we've got a few clever graphics, extremely clever graphics, but we're making sure though on the upfront measurement that before we start on this Iron Man, Iron Woman training, that our bodies are able to take it, right? And can we really endure this? And when those people that go into that kind of training, they check the heart, the bones, the muscles, the blood pressure, and they all have to be deemed ready to start. And on the ongoing along the way, we're checking along as we go along to see if we have worked through the front end planning, and we check the map to see if we're still on course. Are we on the Mississippi, the Missouri, or are we on the Rio Grande? And we also see that as we try to mitigate the risk, which is really the point of this whole exercise, if we've answered the questions and if we defined the unknowns that could jump up and bite us later. And those are the things that usually cost a lot of money. And we know we've probably all had those projects where you feel like you're change ordered to death. Well, was there a reason why you were change ordered to death? May have been a bad contractor, underbid the project, but a lot of times we found out that it's not necessarily the case. It's usually because the stuff was not defined and documented before you really hit the starting gun. And if we're really honest about that, we would all be nodding our head, yeah, that's probably the truth. So we all know it's important to plan, but oh wow, do we really have the time to do that? Do we really want to spend the money on that? Let me just go through this real quick on the Lewis and Clark expedition. Their goal was to make natural observations, establish relationships with the Native American tribes, and they wanted to establish routes for travel for future settlement. And so when Jefferson got together with Lewis, they put their heads together and they decided they need to sit down and really plan this out. So they spent 10 months sequestered in the White House, actually putting the whole plan together before they ever even showed up in the St. Louis area. So what about projects that fail? Yeah, did they have everything planned out? Well, they had some unexpected turns, but they were ready for those things and they made it work. But projects that fail are the ones that have not been planned out appropriately. Just imagine Jefferson giving Lewis the directive to go west without any of those necessary pieces of information that they had worked out in the 10 months of planning. Even worse, what if Jefferson told Lewis to get moving before they actually did that front end planning? Hey, just head off to St. Louis and get going on this. No, that was ridiculous. They had to plan carefully. I think we can all agree it would have been a disaster, and it probably would have ended up with a lot more dead people than they had on the trip anyway. So planning, a lot of times we get stuck planning for the wrong events. We've not really thought through what we're trying to accomplish here. So let's make sure that we know exactly what we're planning for. And then Jefferson and Lewis spent 10 months. They didn't spend 20 months or years planning for this trip. They spent 10 months. They got the planning done, and they didn't wait. They went on the expedition. It took taking a lot of guts to do that, don't you think? But the PDRI, this process provides a framework for that planning, and it also provides us the ability to get focused on the right planning, and it sets a framework for successful execution. And before we go much further, I do want to say that this is not a commercial for the PDRI. We're just advocating for something that works. Okay, we're suggesting that this is something that works. I was behind on the slide there. My apologies. So we've got to make sure that we are focused in the right direction, and this process helps us get there. Shane, you had an interesting story about some young folks that had an adventure.
Sure, yeah. The story is 4 young college students did not spend upfront time planning during finals. In fact, they were out partying and did not do upfront planning, but they came up with a scheme, an idea, went into their professor, said, look, what happened was we were at a wedding, behaving ourselves, coming back, and a tire blew out, and we had to push the car all the way back to town. And they came in disheveled with grease on their face, and professor said, no problem, completely understand, don't worry about it, you've got 3 days, come back in 3 days. And this time they did do their planning. They were on task, they planned, they came back in 3 days. Professor said, now, since this is a special circumstances, we will need to separate you in 4 different rooms. There were 4 college students, separate them in 4 different rooms. College students were absolutely fine with this because, again, they had this time, first time they failed to plan, this time they planned well. No problem. So they sat down, the professor said, okay, here's the test. So he gave them the test. 2 questions on the test on the screen. This time they had planned, but they had planned for the wrong events.
Yeah. So had they really thought through which tire it was that blew out and planned for that? I doubt it. I doubt it. So we want to get to the risk management piece of this if we can real quickly here. The good thing about the PDRI process is this is objective scoring. And what that means is that we're still just giving ourselves a grade on where we are in the project. And the intention is to actually bring in all the stakeholders that you can to the table and kind of go around the table and say, on a scale of 0 to 5, what would you grade our knowledge about this particular item? And you go through each one of those in as much detail as you need to figure out where you are. And at the end, you have a total score. You get, and we'll go through a little bit of the scoring process. I'll show you what that looks like in just a few minutes here. But so it's objective scoring, and there are measurements at set gates. And this next slide, you'll see what the whole process looks like. So the front end planning process starts with the feasibility, concept, detailed scope, and design and construction. The PDRI, along the way, you do your grades, okay? So going from your beginning harebrained or genius idea on the left side, you're going to apply the PDRI. And you're going to say, okay, what's my score? And you're going to come up with a number. And as you go along, the intention is to improve that score until you get to the end here of the detailed scope, and you're ready to start design and construction. So this doesn't take place during the design, and that's a really important point. We've seen this method utilized by many organizations, including Anheuser-Busch, NASA, Department of Energy, and it's been independently validated by Arizona State University, MIT, University of Colorado, and other educational institutions, and others it's a proven method to objectively guide people through this front-end process. We suggest injecting the PDRI when the initial ideas are thought out and a plan is hatched, whether it's genius or harebrained. We think there's value in that. Obviously, if it's a stupid idea, your score is going to be bad enough, and you're going to say, well, scrap that one, on to the next idea. But it's a proven method, and it's used by a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. Like I said, Anheuser-Busch, and I don't know if InBev still does that to date, but I do know that Anheuser-Busch was militant about using this. And as you see along the bottom of the graphic, the effectiveness it goes down as you go towards the design and construction, because you can only improve as you have the ability to make the changes along the way. And so you'll see that it really ends at the end of detailed scope. That's where it stops. And you could do a PDRI during design and construction, but you really shouldn't see any changes to the scope unless there's some curveballs that have been thrown in there. You just don't know. So front-end planning is what Jefferson and Lewis did before ever even showing up on the banks of Mississippi. Now Abe Lincoln, he famously quoted, "Give me 4 hours to cut down a tree, and I'll spend 3 hours sharpening the axe." And that's what we're trying to get across, that it's important to spend this time front-end wise. All right, the benefits for the PDRI format, that each element has a detailed description. The team, the stakeholders, they rate each element for a total score of up to 1,000 aggregate. And usually your good scores, and what you do is you head down in the score. It's like a game of golf. I'll show you that in just a minute here. But it requires a series of meetings with stakeholders, including all those at the plant, those on the maintenance side, those at corporate. Perhaps it has your architect and engineer. It should. Your architect, engineer, and designers, and all your team has a stake in this project. All come to the table and they're required to participate in this. So the earlier you get this injected into it, the better off you're going to be. You want to, like, here we go. I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty with my screen here. You want to lower the score as you go along. The range starts at 1,000. The typical is around 700 to 800 at the beginning phases, and it ends up the final. You want to be somewhere below 250 on your score. That's just for your edification, so you know about what this looks like. And we recommend, of course we would, that you utilize an outside facilitator. For one, the outside facilitator is probably going to have a little better grasp on how to ask the right questions and guide people through it. But they're also unbiased. There's no stake in this for them. That, you know, hey, whatever you decide is what you decide. And also be able to ask the tough questions. Are you sure you know this about this particular issue? The utilities, that's a famous one. How much water do you have for your site? Are you sure that's enough? And the outside facilitator also makes sure that you have everybody participating. And that's important. You don't want to leave anybody out, because at the end, you've been in those projects before. Hey, you made this decision without me. I think this, and boy, they throw a curveball and a wrench in the engine, so to speak. And then it also helps to keep on track, because these meetings could go on forever if you didn't have somebody keeping everybody moving along. Let's not go down this rabbit hole. Let's keep moving along and make the grade, set your limits, and that's what your outside facilitator gets done. So in summary, and I'm going to bring up a sample in just a moment here, the PDRI provides, and this is probably one of the most important things we haven't talked about yet, is an alignment of the stakeholders and the objectives of the project. So in other words, if you bring everybody to the table, they have to look at each other and agree on what that grade should be. And that is a really important aspect. I don't know how many projects I've been involved with where the plant said, well, I didn't know anything. This corporate just foisted this upon me. I don't know what's going on. Well, that excuse is gone. We have the ability to bring those people to the table and get these things worked out. And their interests are then incorporated as well. You have an objective framework for the planning process, and you have the systematic framework for not just the planning process, but also monitoring as you go along. And it also, you know, makes sure that people are actually talking to one another. And the refinement of the project scope. Have you? I just wonder if you heard of a project charter or a project design criteria. All those are hammered out as a result of this process. So when you get it all to the point where you're ready to cut your engineering and architecture team loose, all of those things are already defined on the front end. And the other thing it creates is a meaningful to-do list. And that's the interesting part of this, and I'm going to try to bring this up without losing people here. Just a moment. I got to pick my screen. Okay. Shane, do you see the PDRI screen?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Good. So this is what it looks like, and it's, you know, pretty simple stuff. To be honest with you, it's a pretty complex spreadsheet, is what it is, and but it's been developed and refined. We've actually done customizations to it for particular clients and particular industries, so it does lend itself to that. It's fairly simple to do, but you got to kind of know what you do in this spreadsheet. But I'm going to show you what the PDRI score chart typically looks like. If you can see that, this is kind of what I was talking about, where it starts in the feasibility all the way down to the detailed scope. You're going to be somewhere starting, well, in this chart, this is the worst case, somewhere between the green and the red line. 800 down to 250, and in a range of 550 down to 150. So if you're in that range down here, you're good to go on your project, and you're likely to have a lot less trouble with it. So here's what the score sheet looks like. Let me get to that. Okay, this is going to be what your score sheet looks like. And as we go along, we ask the questions, and when you click on these things, it actually brings up information about the questions that we should be thinking about, and the items that need to be included in there. So under the reliability philosophy, these are the items. I'm not going to read that off, but you go through these things, and you're able to ask the questions of all the people. How much do we care about the reliability philosophy? It varies from project to project. We just don't know. But at the end of this, you grade it, and when you grade it, you're going to determine what your score. I put that in the wrong spot there. So if your grade's a 3, you're going to get that's a middle of the road. That you know kind of about it. And if you look at the bottom of the screen there, I don't know if you can read this, but your definition levels are down here at the bottom, and it's 0, doesn't matter. We don't care about it. Up to a 5, it's incomplete, poor definition. All the way down to a 1. So 5 to 1. 1 is you know everything you need to know about it. 5 is we're not sure, and somewhere in between there, we know, but we need to do some more research on that. So if, for instance, you knew what your tie into a water system was, but you don't know the flow rate, but you know the location, okay, somebody needs to go get the flow rate from that. All right, Joe, you need to go get information about that. And as you do, you put your comments here on the right side, and those will get spit out into kind of a to-do list for each individual that participates. And they can take that and then get those things for the next meeting. The next time they come together, hey, we've got that figured out. Here's what the answer is. We can say it's a 1 now because we know everything about it. Okay, and you go through each section. Site, process, mechanic. This happens to be this is customized for the mining client. We do a lot of work with mining industry, but we've done it with industrial and infrastructure and a number of different types of clients out there. So there are different ones that are customized just for your industry. So those in the transportation, there's an infrastructure PDRI as well. So this is kind of what it looks like in an overview. I know we went real fast there and probably left some carnage along the way, but Shane, just wanted to see if there were any questions that people had.
Yeah, again, we wanted to not take up a whole lot of people's time, keep it to 30 minutes. So good job, Jay. But if there's any questions, if you, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a chat box. If you hover above that, it looks like a voice in a cartoon, and you can type in your questions there.
And Shane, emails, would you mind sending the emails for include my email with all those participants if they want to ask me something directly?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that, and we'll also be sending out PDH credit.
Right.
Great. PDH credit. We'll leave it open for a couple of minutes for questions, and tell you what, we can also, if somebody wants to just unmute their mic, they can just speak as well. So, all right. Well, good job. Like we say, we'll send out the PDH certificates. We'll include Jay and my contact information. If you have questions, please. Oh, there is one question just came up. So, the question is, Jay, what does it cost for the system?
To buy the system is, I believe, a couple $100 if you buy it from it. Now that's for one market sector. So if you were to get the PDRI for the industrial projects, it's $200, and every other module beyond that is a couple $100. And they are freely available. You can buy them and do it yourself. But they also have some tutorials on how to do it yourself. And like I say, we're not a commercial for them. We're just suggesting this is a good idea, and we are facilitators. We've gone through it, so we would certainly want to take you through at least the first one. And once that's done, we have done this in the past where we show people how to do it. They then take it from there and do it for themselves.
And
that's entirely
does CDG provide facilitator service? You touched on that a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate what a facilitator would do then, or what we would do as a facilitator.
Sure. We've done it both remotely and in person. At this point, we're probably kind of stuck with the remote process. But yeah, basically, the facilitator takes you through all of the elements, on a case-by-case basis. The facilitator also ensures that the lead on the client side would be, you would ask, make sure you have all the stakeholders that you need to be at this meeting, because otherwise it's a waste of time. You need to have all those people that you can to be participating. But yes, we facilitate. We basically go through this, fill it out, come up with the score, and then produce the document that says here's what the to-do list is. Distribute that to the project manager or to the team, for that matter, depending on the relationship. That's what the facilitator does, and ask the hard questions and make sure that people stay online, stay on point. And it helps to have somebody who's kind of familiar with the industry as well, because there are times that you get involved with those questions and people say, oh yeah, I know all about that, but then when you really drill down, you find out they really don't know everything. So and having somebody of that knowledge can ask those pointed questions.
A couple of other emails is sending out the PowerPoints. We'll certainly do that. We'll also include a link for the video. I'm sure that a lot of people will want to bring their kids around and watch it with popcorn Friday night. So that's what I plan on doing. So another question is, did CII ever come out with a PDRI Lite for small projects?
Yes, there are two versions. There's and they're for the industrial and infrastructure, small industrial and small infrastructure. They have not come out with one for small buildings yet. But yes, there are the small projects, and they define kind of what they look at as small projects, and their dollar limit thresholds that they would consider small thresholds where it would apply.
Any other questions? We want to play Stump the Chump here with Jay.
Stump the Chump, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I hope it's been helpful. And like I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we see the value of spending the time and money up front pays for itself over and over and over again on the back end. So that's a really key point. Don't underestimate what the prior planning does for you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll end the presentation now.